Wednesday, December the 1st. An emotion-packed phone call from Grandma. Stick Insect has taken Brett and Maxwell to stay with Maxwell's father, who has just come back from the Middle East, loaded with tax-free money and stuffed toy camels. Apparently, my father doesn't mind being deprived of his paternal rights, and Maxwell's dad doesn't care that Stick Insect has had a baby in his absence. I am shocked. Am I to be the sole guardian of the little morality left in our society? Thursday, December the 2nd. Maxwell's dad, Trevor Roper, doesn't mind about Brett because he thinks Brett is the result of having faulty coitus interruptus. Stick Insect is getting married to Mr. Roper as soon as his divorce is through. It's no wonder the country is on its knees. I am seriously thinking about returning to the church. Not to go to Stick Insect's wedding either. I have made an appointment to see a vicar, Reverend Silver. I got him out of the Yellow Pages. Friday, December the 3rd. The vicar was mending his bike when I first saw him. He looked quite normal, except that he was wearing a black dress. He got up and gave me a bone-crushing handshake. Then he took me to his study and asked me what I wanted to see him about. I said I was worried about the disintegration of morals in modern life. He lit a cigarette with trembly hands and inquired if I had asked God for guidance. I said I had stopped believing in God. He said, "Oh God, not another one." He talked for ages. It all boiled down to having faith. I said I hadn't got faith and asked him how to get it. He said, "You must have faith." It was like listening to a stuck record. I said, "If God exists, how come he allows wars and famines and motorway crashes to happen?" Reverend Silver said, "I don't know. I lie awake wondering that myself." Mrs. Silver came in with 2 mugs of Nescafe and a box of Mr. Kipling's iced fancies. She said, "Derek, your Open University thing is starting in 10 minutes. I asked the Reverend Silver what he was studying. He said, "Microbiology. You know where you are with microbes." I said goodbye and wished him luck in his change of career. He told me not to despair and showed me out into the mad, bad world. It was cold and dark, and some yobs were throwing chips about in the street. I went home feeling worse than ever. Saturday, December the 4th. I am having a nervous breakdown. Nobody has noticed yet. Sunday, December the 5th. Went to see Bert. He is my last hope. Pandora failed me. She blamed my mental state on my being a meat-eater. I said, "Bert, I'm having a breakdown." Bert said that he had had a breakdown in the First World War. He said his was caused by seeing thousands of dead men and being constantly afraid for his life. He asked what mine was caused by. I said, "The lack of morals in society." Bert said, "You daft bugger. What you need is a good stint of hard work. You can start on the washing up." When I'd finished, Queenie made me a cup of tea and a pile of crab paste sandwiches. While I ate, I watched songs of praise on the television. The church was full of happy-looking people all singing their hearts out. How come they've got faith and I've not? Just my luck. Monday, December the 6th. I was woken up at 1 a.m, 2:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. by Rosie screaming. I got up at 6 a.m. and listened to a farming programme on Radio 4. Some old rustic gas bag was drivelling on about geese farming in Essex. At 8:30, I went into my mother's room to ask for my dinner money and found Rosie fast asleep in my mother's bed. This is strictly forbidden by the baby books. I checked that Rosie could breathe properly. Then, after taking £3 out of my mother's purse, I went to school and tried to behave normally. Tuesday, December the 7th. Queenie died at 3 o'clock this morning. She had a stroke in her sleep. Bert said that it was a good way to go, and I'm inclined to agree with him. It was strange to go into Bert's house and see Queenie's things all over the place. I still can't believe she is dead and that her body is in the co-op funeral parlour. I didn't cry when my mother told me the news. In fact, I felt like laughing. It wasn't until I saw Queenie's pot of rouge standing on the dressing table that tears leaked out. I didn't let Bert see me crying, and he didn't let me see him crying, but I know he has been. There are no clean hankies left in his drawer. Bert doesn't know what to do about death certificates and funeral arrangements, etc., so Pandora's father came round to do all the death paperwork. Wednesday, December the 8th. Bert has asked me to write a poem to put in the deaths column of the local paper. 10 p.m. I am terrified. In fact, I have got writer's block. 11:30 p.m. Unblocked. Finished poem. Thursday, December the 9th. The following announcements appeared in the paper tonight. Baxter, Maud Lillian, Queenie. Passed away peacefully at home on the 7th of December 1982. To the best girl that ever was, Bert, Sabre and Adrian. White face, red cheeks, eyes like crocus buds, hands deft and sure, yet worked to gnarled roots, a practical, comfortable body dressed in young colours, feet twisted but planted firmly on the ground, a sure soft voice with a crackly sudden laugh. Her body is lifeless and cold, but the memory of her is joyful and as warm as a rock pool in August. Funeral service and cremation, Monday the 13th of December at 1:30 p.m. at Gilmore's Crematorium. Floral tributes to cooperative funeral service. Written with love from Adrian, on the instructions of Mr. Bertram Baxter. Baxter, Queenie. Sadly missed, Pauline and Rosie Mole. Baxter, Maud Lillian. The parting was so sudden, we sit and wonder why. The saddest thing of all is that we never said goodbye. From your grieving son Nathan and your daughter-in-law Maria and Jody and Jason, grandchildren. Baxter, Queenie. Adieu, Queenie, Mr. and Mrs. Braithwaite and Pandora. Baxter, Queenie. Always a smile and a kindly word. She'd never pass on the things she heard. She bore her troubles with never a moan. To every stray dog she would give a bone. God bless Queenie. From your friends at the Evergreens. Baxter, Queenie. Life is a struggle in search of a vision. You have found your vision, we hope. From your friends, the Singh family. Baxter, Queenie. Words can't express how much I will miss my old pal, your neighbour, Doris. Baxter, Queenie. Deepest sympathy, from John the milkman. Baxter, Queenie. We have lost a dear old friend, Julian and Sandy, at the Jolie Madame hair salon. Baxter, Queenie. A sad loss, May and George Mole. Baxter, Queenie. I'll miss you, Queenie, Betty in the sweet shop, and her husband Cyril, and children Carol and Pat. My tribute to Queenie has caused a stir. People have said it's in bad taste and have complained that it doesn't rhyme. Must I live amongst uneducated peasants for the rest of my life? I long for the day when I buy my first studio flat in Hampstead. I will have a notice on my door. No hawkers, traders or Philistines. Friday, December the 10th. Mr. Braithwaite is very worried about Queenie's funeral. The cheapest he can arrange will cost £350. Plain coffin, one hearse, one mourner's car. But Queenie's funeral insurance is only worth £30. She took it out in 1931, when £30 would buy you a fancy coffin, 2 teams of black horses with plumes, a funeral tea, and a gang of top-hatted attendants. The death grant the government gives you is no help. It doesn't buy a brass coffin nail. The only solution is for Bert to take out hire purchase and have Queenie's funeral on the Never Never. Saturday, December the 11th. The finance company have turned down Bert's request for a loan. They say he is too old at nearly 90 so it looks like Queenie will have to be buried by Social Security. Grey van, plywood coffin, ashes put in a jam jar. Bert is dead upset. He said, I wanted my girl to go out properly. I spent all night phoning around to everyone who knew Queenie, getting them to donate money. I was called a saint several times. Sunday, December the 12th. My mother has gone out with Mrs. Singh, Mrs. O'Leary and her women's group to have a picnic on Greenham Common. She has taken Rosie, so the house is dead peaceful. I played my Toya records at full volume and had a bath with the door open. 10:02 p.m. I have just seen the Greenham women on the telly. They were tying babies' booties onto the wire surrounding the missile base. Then they held hands with each other. The newscaster said that 30,000 women were there. The dog was sulking because my mother had gone out for the day. It didn't understand that she was miles away, safeguarding its future. They got back safely. The women's group came back to our house. They talked about female solidarity while I served them coffee and tuna sandwiches. I felt excluded from the conversation, so I went to bed. 2 a.m. Just woken up by Mr. Singh and Mr. O'Leary banging on our door demanding entrance. I got up and explained to them that there were about 20 women in our living room. Mr. O'Leary said, Tell Caitlin to hurry up. I can't find my pyjamas. Mr. Singh said, Ask Sita to tell me how to work our electric kettle. I advised them to go home for their own safety. Monday, December the 13th. Queenie's funeral. We dropped Rosie off at Mrs. Singh's and walked round to Bert's bungalow. All the curtains in the street were shut out of respect for Queenie. The neighbours were out looking at the floral tributes which were lined up alongside the little path to the front door. Bert was sitting in his wheelchair wearing his wedding suit. Sabre was sitting by his side. My mother gave Bert a kiss. Bert said, I don't like to think about her lying in an unheated coffin. She never did like the cold. My mother acted as hostess because none of Queenie's relations came. Queenie quarrelled with them because they disapproved when she married Bert. The mourners' cars arrived, so me and the co-op men carried Bert out to the leading car, then me and my mother and Doris from next door and Mr. and Mrs. Braithwaite and Pandora sat in the leading car. The second car filled up with less important mourners, and we set off very slowly to Gilmore's crematorium. As we passed the cemetery gates, an old man took his hat off and bowed his head. Bert said that the old man was a stranger. I was very touched by this gesture of respect. My mother and father sat together in the chapel, briefly united. Me and Pandora sat either side of Bert. He said he wanted to have young uns around him. The service was short. We sang Queenie's favourite carol, Away in a Manger, and her favourite song, If I Ruled the World. Then, while the organ played sad music, the coffin started sliding towards purple curtains around the altar. When the coffin reached the curtains, Pandora whispered, God, how perfectly barbaric. I watched with horror as the coffin disappeared. Bert said, Ta-ra, old girl. And then Queenie was burnt in the oven. I was so shocked I could hardly walk up the aisle. Pandora and I both looked up when we got outside. Smoke was pouring out of the chimney and was carried away by the wind. Queenie always said she wanted to fly. I suppose there is a sort of logic to life and death. Rosie was born, and so Queenie had to make way for her. The funeral tea was held at Pandora's house. It was a very jolly affair. Bert held up well and even cracked a few jokes. But I noticed that whenever I mentioned Queenie's name, people looked away and pretended not to hear. So Bert is on his own again, and will need more looking after than ever. How will I cope? I've got my O-levels in June. Tuesday, December the 14th. It was on Radio 4 that the government is spending £1 billion on buying war equipment. Yet one of our science laboratories at school is closing down after Christmas because our school can't afford to pay a new teacher. Poor old Mr. Hill is retiring after 30 years of sweating over the Bunsen burners. He will be sadly missed. He was dead strict, but dead fair with it. He was never sarcastic and seemed to listen to what you were saying. Also, he gave out mini Mars bars for good work. Wednesday, December the 15th. We put the Christmas tree up tonight. It had gone a bit rusty, but I tied tinsel round the worst bits. My mother insisted on hanging up the decorations I made when I was a little kid. She said they had sentimental value for her. It looked okay when all the flashy balls and bad taste angels were bunged on it. I picked Rosie up and showed her the finished tree, but I can't say she was overjoyed. In fact, she just yawned. The dog, on the other hand, had one of its mad fits and had to be restrained with a rolled-up guardian. Thursday, December the 16th. Bought a pack of cheap Christmas cards from Cherries, but didn't write in them. I will wait and see who sends me one first. Friday, December the 17th. The school's internal Christmas post service is as bad as the GPO's. I posted Pandora a card before assembly, but she still hadn't had it by the end of the last lesson. I will find out which first years were on elf duty today and severely rebuke them. Saturday, December the 18th. Courtney has made £150 in tips from his post round. He is spending it on a weekend in Venice. He says that Christmas in Venice is an experience that everyone should have at least once in their lives. I wish I could have that experience. Courtney said that English canals are not a patch on Venetian ones. Sunday, December the 19th. Today, Rosie Germaine Mole smiled for the first time. The recipient of the smile was the dog. My father rang to ask what we are doing for Christmas. My mother said, "The usual seasonal things, George. Eating turkey, getting drunk, buying replacement bulbs for the fairy lights." My father said, "Mother and me will be having a quiet time, on our own, alone, just the two of us, away from our nearest and dearest." My mother said, "It sounds divine. Well, I must dash. A crowd of pre-Christmas revellers have just turned up with the champagne." This was a complete and utter lie. It was only me coming into the room with a cup of cocoa. Monday, December the 20th. We break up tomorrow, so the school has gone a bit wild. The girls are doing no work at all. They just sit around the classrooms counting how many Christmas cards they've received from each other and writing out hundreds more. The elf postal service is being swamped. I haven't sent any cards at all yet. I'm still waiting to see if anybody sends me one. Tomorrow is the day of the school concert. It will be the first year I have had nothing to do. My mother is glad because it means she won't have to go. Tuesday, December the 21st. Last day of school. Thank God, I got 7 Christmas cards. 3 tasteful, 4 in putrid taste and printed on flimsy rubbish paper that won't stand up. On receipt, I quickly wrote out 7 cards and gave them to a passing elf. Mr. Golightly, director of the Christmas play, The Importance of Being Earnest Christmas Show, was very irritable today when I wished him good luck for tonight. He said, "Thanks to your abdication, Adrian, I have got a midget playing Ernest." Peter Brown, whose mother smoked throughout her pregnancy. I'm glad I did abdicate from my role, because the play was a complete fiasco. Lady Bracknell forgot to say a handbag, and Peter Brown stood behind a chair so that the audience only saw the top of his head. Simone Bates as Gwendolen was quite good, but what a shame her costume didn't hide her tattoos. The other parts are just not worth writing about. The best thing in the show was the scenery. I congratulated Mr. Animba, the woodwork teacher, on his dedication. He said, "Do you think anybody noticed that it was adapted from the Peter Pan scenery of 3 years ago?" I assured him that nobody had complained that the view from the French windows was of a palm-fringed island. Mr. Golightly was nowhere to be seen at the end of the play. Somebody told me that he had run from the wings shortly before the end, saying he had to visit his mother in hospital. The best thing about the evening was the interval, when Pandora played her viola in the refreshment room. Wednesday, December the 22nd. Drew £15 out of my building society today. I know it's a lot, but I've got an extra person to buy for. Rosie. 9:30 p.m. Forgot that Queenie isn't here anymore. I needn't have been so extravagant. My memory. Thursday, December the 23rd. Made a list and went to Woolworths, as they have got a good selection of festive gifts. Dog. False bone. £1.25. Pandora solid gold chain. £2. Mother egg timer. About £1.59. Rosie chocolate Santa. 79p. Bert 20 woodbines. £1.09. Nigel, he gets nothing this year. His best friend is now Clive Barnes. Father, festive tin of antifreeze, £1.39. Grandma, gift pack of dusters, £1.29. Auntie Susan, hanky set, 99p. Sabre, dog comb, £1.29. Woolworths was swarming with last-minute shoppers, so I had to queue for half an hour at the checkout till. Why do people wait to do their shopping until there are only 2 days left before Christmas? I couldn't get on a bus home because of the stupid lemmings. Went to the off-the-streets youth club party with Pandora. Nigel caused a scandal by dancing with Clive Barnes, who was wearing lipstick and mascara. Everyone was saying that Nigel is gay, so I made sure that everyone knew that he is no longer my best friend. Barry Kent smuggled 2 cans of tartan bitter through the fire doors. His gang of 6 shared them and got leglessly drunk. At the end of the party, Rick Lemon put White Christmas by some old Crumbly on the record deck, and all the couples danced romantically together. I told Pandora how much I adored her, and she said, "Adie, my pet, how long will our happiness last?" Trust Pandora to put a damp cloth on everything. Saw her home, kissed her twice, went home, fed dog, checked Rosie's pulse, went to bed. Friday, December the 24th, Christmas Eve. My mother is being kept a prisoner by Rosie, so I have had to do all the Christmas preparations. I was up at 7:30 queuing in the butcher's for a fresh turkey, pork joint and sausage meat. By 9 a.m. I was in the queue at the greengrocer's. £3 of sprouts, 24 tangerines, £2 mixed nuts, 2 bunches of holly, make sure they have berries, salad, don't forget green pepper, 2 boxes of dates, get those with camel on lid, £3 of apples, if no coxes get Granny Smith, £6 potatoes, check each one for signs of sprouting. By 11:15 I was in the laundrette, washing and drying the loose covers off the 3-piece suite. 2 p.m. saw me at the grocer's with a long list and Rosie's pram outside to cart everything home. £2.50's worth of Stilton, make sure good blue colour, firm texture, 2 boxes sponge fingers, red and yellow jelly, tin of fruit salad. It went on forever. At 4:10 p.m. I was struggling into Woolworths' front doors and trying to fight my way to the fairy light counter. At 4:20 I got to the counter only to find empty shelves and other desperate people swapping rumours. Curry's have got some lantern style. Rumbelows have got 2 packets of the star type. Habitat have got the high-tech styles, but they're pricey. I went to all the above shops and more, but at 5 p.m. I admitted defeat and joined the long queue at the bus stop. Drunken youths covered in crazy foam and factory girls wearing tinsel garlands paraded around the town singing carols. Jesus would have turned in his tomb. At 5:25, I had a panic attack and left the queue and rushed into Marks and Spencer's to buy something. I was temporarily deranged. A voice inside my head kept saying, "Only 5 minutes before the shop shut. Buy, buy, buy." The shop was full of sweating men buying women's underwear. At 5:29, I came to my senses and went back to bus stop. Just in time to see the bus leaving. I got home at 6:15 after buying a packet of fairy lights from Cherry's shop, which is just around the corner from our house. My mother has made the lounge look especially nice. She'd even dusted the skirting board, and when the new fairy lights were switched on and the fruit arranged and the holly stuck up, etc., it looked like a room on a Christmas card. Me and my mother had a quick drink before Bert arrived in an age-concerned car driven by a kind volunteer. We settled him in front of the telly with a beetroot sandwich and a bottle of brown ale, and we went into the kitchen to start the mince pies and trifles. 1 a.m. Just got back from the midnight service. It was very moving, even for an atheist, though I think it was a mistake to have a live donkey in the church. 2 a.m. Just remembered. Forgot to buy nutcrackers. Saturday, December the 25th, Christmas Day. Got up at 7:30. Had a wash and a shave, cleaned teeth, squeezed spots, then went downstairs and put kettle on. I don't know what's happened to Christmas Day lately, but something has. It's just not the same as it used to be when I was a kid. My mother fed and cleaned Rosie, and I did the same to Bert. Then we went into the lounge and opened our presents. I was dead disappointed when I saw the shape of my present. I could tell at a glance that it didn't contain a single microchip. OK, a sheepskin coat is warm, but there's nothing you can do with it, except wear it. In fact, after only 2 hours of wearing it, I got bored and took it off. However, my mother was ecstatic about her egg timer. She said, "Wow, another one for my collection." Rosie ignored the chocolate Santa I bought her. That's 79 pence wasted. This is what I got. 3/4 length sheepskin coat out of Littlewood's catalogue. Beano annual. A sad disappointment. This year's is very childish. Slippers, like Michael Caine wears, although not many people know that. Swiss Army knife. My father is hoping I'll go out into the fresh air and use it. Tin of humbugs, supposedly from the dog. Knitted balaclava helmet from Grandma Mole. Yuck. Yuck. Boy's Book of Sport from Grandma Sugden. Stanley Matthews on cover. I was glad when Auntie Susan and her friend Gloria turned up at 11 o'clock. Their talk is very metropolitan and daring, and Gloria is dead glamorous and sexy. She wears frilly dresses and lacy tights and high heels, and she's got an itsy-bitsy voice that makes my stomach go soft. Why she's friends with Auntie Susan, who is a prison warder, smokes Panama cigars and has got hairy fingers, I'll never know. The turkey was okay, but would have been better if the giblets and the plastic bag had been removed before cooking. Bert made chauvinist remarks during the carving. He leered at Gloria's cleavage and said, "Give me a nice piece of breast." Gloria wasn't a bit shocked, but I went dead red and pretended that I'd dropped my cracker under the table. When my mother asked me which part of the turkey I wanted, I said, "A wing, please." I really wanted breast, leg or thigh, but wing was the only part of the bird without sexual connotations. Rosie had a few spoons of mashed potato and gravy. Her table manners are disgusting, even worse than Bert's. I was given a glass of bull's blood wine and felt dead sensual. I talked brilliantly and with consummate wit for an hour, but then my mother told me to leave the table, saying, "One sniff of the barmaid's apron and his mouth runs away with him." The Queen didn't look very happy when she was giving her speech. Perhaps she got lousy Christmas presents this year, like me. Bert and Auntie Susan had a disagreement about the royal family. Bert said he would move the whole lot of them into council houses in Liverpool. Gloria said, "Oh, Bert, that's a bit drastic. Milton Keynes would be more suitable. They're not used to roughing it, you know." In the evening I went round to see Grandma and my father. Grandma forced me to eat 4 mince pies and asked me why I wasn't wearing my new balaclava helmet. My father didn't say anything. He was dead drunk in an armchair. Sunday, December the 26th, first after Christmas. Pandora and I exchanged presents in a candlelit ceremony in my bedroom. I put the solid gold chain round her neck, and she put a 70% wool, 10% cashmere, 20% acrylic scarf around my neck. A cashmere scarf at 15. I'll make sure the label can be seen by the public at all times. Pandora went balmy about the solid gold chain. She kept looking at herself in the mirror. She said, Thank you, darling, but how on earth can you afford solid gold? It must have cost you at least £100. I didn't tell her that Woolworths was selling them cheap at £2 a go. Monday, December the 27th. Boxing Day. Holiday, UK except Scotland. Holiday, Canada. Bank holiday, Scotland. Holiday, Republic of Ireland. Just had a note handed to me from a kid riding a new BMX. Dear heart, I'm awfully sorry, but I will have to cancel our trip to the cinema to see E.T. I woke up this morning with an ugly disfiguring rash around my neck. Yours sincerely, Pandora. P.S. I am allergic to non-precious metal. Tuesday, December the 28th. Walked up and down the high street in my sheepskin coat and cashmere scarf. Saw Nigel in his new leather trousers posing at the traffic lights. He suggested we go to his house to talk. I agreed. On the way, he told me that he was trying to decide which sort of sexuality to opt for, homo, bi, or hetero. I asked him which he felt more comfortable with. He said, all three, Moley. Nigel could never make up his mind. He showed me his presents. He had a multi-gym, Adidas football boots, a Mary Quant makeup hamper, and a unisex jogging suit. Wednesday, December the 29th. Danny Thompson has turned into a Rasta. I met him when I was walking up and down the high street this morning. He asked me if I could play a musical instrument. I said, no. He said, too bad, man. I needs a bass player real quick. I said I was surprised that a reggae band should need a double bass. He did fancy hand clapping and laughed and said, bass guitar, what give out de rhythm? I said that my only contribution to the band could be as a lyricist. He suggested I try writing a few songs and submitting them to the brothers. Then he gave me a complicated handshake and went off down the street with a springy step and with his blonde plaits bobbing up and down. Thursday, December the 30th. Full moon. Me, Mum, Rosie, Auntie Susan and Gloria went to Bridgegate Park today. Bert doesn't like fresh air, so he stayed at home with the dogs and leftover Christmas food. We walked 4 boring miles. I walked behind Gloria so that I could watch her bum and legs properly. Auntie Susan and Gloria are going back to Holloway Prison tonight. They will be sadly missed. They are so gay and vital. Bert is going back to his council bungalow. He will not be missed. He watches ITV all day and won't let anybody else hold Rosie. Friday, December the 31st. Bert has asked if he can stay on until New Year's Day. He said he can't face seeing the new year in with only a voluntary social worker's company. My mother agreed, but she took me into the kitchen and whispered, Look, Bert's not living here forever, Adrian. I can't look after a small baby and a geriatric at the same time. At 11 o'clock, my father rang up to wish us all a happy new year. My mother's face went a bit blotchy and soft, and she invited him round for a drink. At 11:15, Ratfink Lucas rang from Sheffield, whining on about the fact that he was alone with a bottle of Johnny Walker. My mother said, How appalling! You should have bought a decent brand. After all, it is New Year's Eve. She looks dead nice again now that her figure is nearly back to normal. In fact, after the phone call, she looked her old cocky self. My father crossed our doorstep at 1 minute to 12 with a packet of Zip firelighters, the nearest he could get to coal. Then, when the Scottish people on the telly went berserk at midnight, we all stood around Bert's wheelchair, holding hands and singing Auld Lang Syne. Then we talked about Queenie and Stick Insect and said things like, Well, I wonder what 1983 will bring us. Personally, nothing would surprise me anymore. If my father announced that he was really a Russian agent or my mother ran away with a circus knife thrower, I wouldn't raise an eyebrow. Pandora rang at 1 a.m. to say Happy New Year. The Braithwaites' party sounded good. I wished I'd gone instead of being kind and staying at home. Went to bed rigid with fear. 1983 is my O-level year.